Hey guys, welcome back. Anybody seen these Pokemon prices lately? Yeah, how could we possibly have seen this coming? Chilling Reign 190, Fusion Strike broken over 200. There's some of these boxes up for 220 a couple of days ago. Come down a little bit as some more boxes come into the market as people realize, oh my god, I've more than doubled my money, and they come in to sell. Evolving Skies approaching 700. Battle Style still down there at 112. Pretty bad. Brilliant Stars has always been kind of in the 130 to kind of up to this range. So, 155 is not it's not a ton higher than it's been historically. Darkness Ablaze 150, Vivid Voltage kind of low actually, still 130. And then you get into these later Sword and Shield era boxes, 10, 11, and 12. So you got Lost Origin, you got Astral Radiance, and you got Silver Tempest. And there was a time 2 years ago, late 2021, early 2022, and Pokemon USA dumped just an unbelievable amount of boxes on the market. And there's kind of this thing, and I know Rudy talks about it a lot, but it's the propensity of investors to just forget history, to even forget very, very recent history. And so they suffer the same mistakes over and over and over again for a long time, and they'll suffer the same mistakes again in the future. And one of those mistakes is things like forgetting that on the long timeline, Pokemon does really well. And when I kind of facetiously asked, how could we have ever seen this coming? It's because, well, I've made videos about it in the past. This one I haven't updated since October 23rd of 2023. So these data on this chart are about 5 months out of date. But, if we just go back and we look at the black and white era and we make some really worst case assumptions, we say you had to buy the boxes for $100 each, which back in the early 2010s was not realistic. They were a lot cheaper than that. And you were going to sell them and you had to pay 12.5% fees to sell them, and you had to pay for shipping and all this other stuff. What would your compound annual growth rate be? And what we've shown with these analyses again and again and again is that Pokemon just does amazing. Compound annual growth rates in the 20s, 30s, sometimes 40%. And for the whole black and white era, the worst one is 26%. The best one's 49%. And moving on to the XY era, same thing. Nothing fundamentally changed. Pokemon does great. And the Sun and Moon era, it does great. The worst one, 10%. And the best one, 80%. Obviously, I think those two are both outliers, and that's why I have second worst and second best to be a little more indicative. And then the Sword and Shield era, and of course when I took these data 5 months ago, Sword and Shield era was not as old as it is now. And 5 additional months on top of the black and white era is irrelevant, but 5 additional months onto the Sword and Shield era is a bigger percentage of the total amount of time that it's been around. So I'll update these data at some point, maybe in the next month, for another 6-month look at long-term Pokemon performance. But we see this again and again, and we see it in the TCG market all the time. We see that products go out of print, the negativity is forgotten, the supply tightens, and prices go up. And back in late 2021 and early 2022, when on my Friday sealed deals I was telling people you should be buying Fusion Strike, you should be buying Chilling Reign, you should be buying Brilliant Stars, you should be buying Battle Styles, and I was buying them, and I was telling people to buy them. And I would get some of the kind of like low grade casual abuse that people give each other on YouTube. And I remember posting a particular what did I buy this month video back in that time period, and it was mostly Pokemon at the time because so much Pokemon had been dumped on the market. And I remember one particular comment I got. The person said, "You bought a bunch of junk." And we look merely 2 years later and we see that those Chilling Reign and Fusion Strike boxes that I was buying in the high 80s and low 90s, well, they've more than doubled now. And I'm not here to take a victory lap. I'm here to hopefully help a couple of you guys realize that this is what happens again and again and again. And it's not just in TCG investing, it's in all types of investing. People who can put the emotions aside, who can think for themselves, and who don't jump on the bandwagon and buy great products, great assets at a good price, and simply hold them and don't get emotional. Don't dump the first time it goes down by 3%. Don't sell your entire position in a world leading blue chip S&P 500 member because their stock is down 5%. Don't be so emotional about it. And in the long term, your returns will be great. And like I said, we've seen this. We've seen that the last entire decade of Pokemon returns have been unbelievable. And something that I'll always point out when I make these videos about long-term Pokemon returns is that these compound annual growth rates beat the most legendary hedge fund managers in Wall Street history. They beat every one of them. It beats Warren Buffett. It beats all of them. It beats the crap out of all of them. And it's from buying boxes full of cardboard squares with pictures of fighting animals on them. And yet, when you talk to people in the here and now, when the prices are low and when you can buy great assets at a good price, people will have that herd mentality of, well, if the price is low, it must be bad. As I always call it, they let price drive their sentiment instead of the other way around, where they develop their sentiment on a product based on an objective analysis of what the product is, and then that informs what price they're willing to pay. Instead, they look at the price first to look for validation from the crowd, the herd, and then they decide whether or not they will express contempt or desire for the product. And so this will happen again and again and again. It will never stop happening, but on a individual basis, you can choose to learn from this. And this is a great opportunity when so many of these Sword and Shield boxes are starting to approach high 100s, when now Fusion Strike has broken over 200. Rebel Clash has been over 200 for quite a while, and Sword and Shield base is down here. It's been over 200 for quite a while. But, you know, Darkness Ablaze is going to go over 200. Vivid Voltage will go over 200. All the rest of these, even Battle Styles, it'll take longer, but it'll eventually do it too. And there's a little canary in the coal mine for these, and it's the Pokemon Center website, because Pokemon Center sells boxes directly on their website, and this kind of puts an artificial ceiling over the market value of the boxes. Not completely, but to some extent it does. Because if you can come on here and you can buy boxes at MSRP 143.64 for these Sword and Shield era boxes, well, the market price on TCG Player can't get too much higher than that. It can be inefficient and it can go higher, but not too much. But what you'll find from time to time is something goes out of stock here. And what went out of stock recently was Fusion Strike. If you scroll down, you still see it hanging in the wings here with the sold out placard over it. And so what do we have left of Sword and Shield era here? Well, we have 9, 10, 11, and 12. Lost Origin, Silver Tempest, Brilliant Stars, and Astral Radiance. And then Battle Styles, of course. What was it, about number 5 or 6 maybe? And one day these will all dry up and the prices will start to increase, and then they'll break over $200. People will be very surprised. And they'll miss out. They'll miss out on the current things they should be buying at ridiculously good prices. And this is just kind of the problem with human investor mentality. It's that when the prices are low, we panic that the asset must be stupid and worthless and not worth buying. Instead of saying, you know, everyone is fearful, I'll be greedy. And that was something Buffett said. And, you know, the whole quote was, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. And the problem with most investors is that when it's time to get down and be greedy, when everyone is fearful, people like to be fearful with the rest of the herd. They're not always willing to be greedy. It's very rare. And yet, if you had bought Fusion Strike in the high 80s and low 90s and Chilling Reign in the high 80s and low 90s, yeah, you would have more than doubled your money in about 2 years. And even that, I mean, you have to get into the realm of tech companies with dizzyingly sky-high valuations and really, really good fictional stories about what they'll do in the future in order to get those kind of returns. It just beats the crap out of everything else. and yet people will be turned off by the fact that the boxes are cheap. And now, what do we have that's cheap today? Scarlet and Violet era boxes. And here are our first 5 Scarlet and Violet kind of standard boxes. And what do you hear people say? People say, well, Scarlet and Violet era is junk. It's overprinted. No one likes the gray border. The gallery isn't good. And I can tell you that every single complaint you might read from people today who are going out and letting price drive their sentiment and aren't thinking for themselves about what happens to these products in the long term, every single one of those complaints is a complaint that we heard about Sword and Shield era boxes. It's a complaint that we heard about Battle Styles and Chilling Reign and Fusion Strike and Brilliant Stars back in late 21, early 22, all through 2022, as all of those overprinted products had to work their way through the system. We heard all those same complaints that we hear today. And, you know, this Friday, there's going to be a bonus buck sale on TCG Player, and some of these boxes will be down in the 70s, the high 70s, the low to mid 80s, the low 90s for these current boxes. And there are a lot of people who will choose to miss out again because they let price drive their sentiment, because they can't look into the future far enough. The long-term thesis for all of these boxes is that they will go out of print. We know when they'll go out of print. And when they're out of print, the supply will start to tighten. Pokemon buyers are crazy fanatics. They are a whole different breed than Magic buyers, than Flesh and Blood buyers, than all the rest. Pokemon buyers want to fill binders with cards. They want to get complete sets, and they will rip packs mercilessly to do that, and they will pay a lot of money for it. And as the supplies tighten up, people are chasing the special cards, chasing complete sets, chasing filling up their binders. They'll consume more and more of these boxes. And 2 years from now, 2.5 years from now, 3 years from now, we'll be looking at these very same boxes, and they'll be starting to break over $200 each. And all those complaints that we might hear today that, well, the trainer gallery is no good, the gray border sucks, it's overprinted, the pulls are too easy, all of those will be forgotten the same exact way that all of those same complaints about Sword and Shield era boxes have been forgotten today. Because today all anyone is thinking about is, wow, Chilling Reign's $190, Fusion Strike has broken over 200, the worst performer is Battle Styles? Wow. And even it has gone up more than 10% per year. In stock market terms, that's still respectable. Evolving Skies, almost $700. So it'll happen again and again and again. And, you know, I'm not immune to this. And in the early 2000s, when I started investing in the stock market, there were several market cycles where I was paralyzed with the same fear, where I would look around at more experienced and wealthier people, and I would take their advice, which was, when things are cheap, get scared, sell low, protect what you have left, which is maybe the most dangerous sentence in all of investing. And I missed out on a couple of market cycles in the early and mid 2000s because of that in the stock market. And it took a while for me to learn that when other people are fearful, you need to be greedy, and you need to not just parrot the words, you need to actually do them. There is a time to be greedy, to buy hand over fist, to reach out with both hands and catch the falling knife, because in the long run, that's how you make the most money. So, not much else to say about that. It's something I've talked about many, many times on this channel in the past, but with channel growth and just kind of regular turnover and things like that, it's something that I'll probably visit again and again in the future. Hopefully I'll remember I've made this video 2-3 years from now, once these early S&V era boxes are breaking over $200, and we'll be having the same conversation again. Whatever the era at the time then in the future is, people will be saying, the trainer gallery is no good, the pulls are too easy, 9 billion cards were printed, all of that stuff. And it won't matter. It still won't matter. It won't matter like it hasn't mattered for the last decade, and it won't matter for Sword and Shield, and it won't matter in the future. Remember 18 months ago, maybe closer to 24 months ago now, that article came out that Pokemon had printed 9 billion cards It was something like 9 billion cards in the previous 18 months before that. And it was maybe 30 or 40% of all Pokemon cards ever printed had been printed in that time period during the mania of 2020 and 2021. And it doesn't matter. Here are the prices. The boxes are doing great because Pokemon buyers are fanatics of a different breed, and in the long term, it will not matter. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.